Alrighty, so our goal today is going to be to run a spigot off of the water main underneath the stairs here. We're going to tap into the 3/4 inch PEX there, and that wall right there is goes to the garage. And so we're just going to put a spigot right through that wall into the garage so that we have a water source on the other side of the garage. So the parts, real quick, I'll show that again, but the parts that we're going to need are a 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch sharkbite made for PEX T adapter. And then here's our spigot, and this is a sharkbite spigot or faucet. I would have preferred to use a frost-free adapter, but Home Depot didn't carry 1 3/4 inch. They only had 1/2 inch, and I really wanted 3/4 for the pressure. So to make sure that we don't have any freezing issues, we are going to put a 3/4 by 3/4 inch slip ball valve. This is simply a quick on-off valve that I'm going to put inside the closet here underneath the stairs to allow us to turn off the water to the spigot in the garage in the wintertime. And you just open up the spigot in the garage and drain out that extra water so it can't freeze, just in case your garage got below freezing. Shouldn't be a problem, but this is certainly optional. But I'm adding again, a 3/4 inch sharkbite pressure gauge to show my water pressure in the house, because I'm hoping to change my water pressure after I get done with this and increase it a little bit if possible. And then this piece is important. This is a depth and pipe deburring tool, and this ensures that the ends of your PEX are ready for insertion into the sharkbite adapters, and we'll get a good seal. And then I think this was like a 2-foot section of, or maybe it was 20 inches, I can't remember. Anyway, 3/4 inch PEX, again from Home Depot. This is PEX B, 3/4 inch, which is not as flexible as PEX A, but they didn't carry PEX A. You get it to focus there. They don't carry PEX A at Home Depot. In short lengths, you have to buy an entire roll of it, which I didn't want 30 feet of PEX, honestly, when I only need a few inches. So that's all the supplies that you need to make this happen. Oh, you will need a cutter. I'll show you what I use for a cutter. I'll add that here in a second. So PEX makes a cutter also, but this I already had this one in my garage, which is perfect for cutting PEX. It's pretty easy to use. So the first thing I've done here, you can see it, I already closed the water main. You can see it's perpendicular to the water line that's coming in. And then I opened the faucets in my downstairs bathroom, both shower and sink, to try and help drain as much of the water out of the house system as I can before I get started here. I'll grab a large bucket and place it in the closet here, and then so that when I make the cut up on that pipe and water comes rushing out of it, that I've got a bucket to get that water to run into. So basically the first thing I'm going to do above that water pressure adjustment lever right there is put in the water pressure gauge. So I've got that down low, and then above that I'm going to put in the T that will head towards the garage, and I'll make those marks on the pipe here shortly. So I've got my bucket in place, and I've marked my first line. I don't really have the ability to film while I'm doing this, unfortunately, so I'll just give you updates in between each step. But I'll use my cutter now to make a nice 90-degree perpendicular cut on that line. All right, so that worked as I thought it would. Made the cut nice and quick, and splashed a little water back there, and I brought it over the bucket. And you can see I got quite a bit of water in the bucket, so pretty important you have something in place before you do this. A lot of water is held in that line. Now I'm going to use the depth gauge and deburring tool to deburr this pipe and set the depth. And so pretty easy. You turn this and you can see up in there it's cutting a little bit of the blue plastic away, which is deburring it. And my light keeps turning on and off. So this is what I wanted you to see, that this tool actually, I was turning it the wrong way. If you, when you turn it, it deburrs that outer edge to help you get a better seal in the sharkbite tool, or sharkbite fitting. And now that I've got that done, I'll draw a black line right there to mark the depth. All right, now that I have it deburred and my depth marked, I'm gonna install the pressure gauge. Again, super easy. You just slip these on, and like so. And I need to hold this pipe from down below. I'll try and keep filming while I do this, but my guess is that this is going to be challenging to try and figure out how to film. I didn't really set up for doing that. Here we go. Let's see if I can do this. There we go. There we go. And so I slid that on all the way until I got down to the mark. Was not super easy to slide on. The gauge does rotate easily, so that I'll be able to see that. Can't get it in focus, but there we go. All right, think about the next step now. So the next step now is to run a short section. I would estimate 6 inches, but I need to do a little bit of measuring to come up to the T that I'm going to install, that will then head straight off to the left. But I do want my spigot kind of high in the garage, personal goal of mine. So I need to measure and see exactly where I want that T to be at up there, and then I'll come back. So before I move to the next step inside the closet, I think it's important to know exactly where the spigot's going to be on the inside of the wall. For my placement out here in the garage, I plan to put it right here, and that lines up, which is exactly 5 inches from the wall on the other side. And so I'm going to drill a 1/2 inch hole, I'm sorry, 3/4 inch hole for the PEX to go through. Again, you can see this is another sharkbite fitting on the back of this, which is going to be really slick because the PEX will just slide right in there and lock. Again, there's no clamps or anything to tighten down. And then you just screw this in. Now, one thing I have that most of you probably won't is I've got a solid surface out here to screw my spigot to. You're probably gonna, without something like that, you're probably gonna want, just a piece of plywood that can go across horizontally, that you can attach to a couple of studs, and then you've got something to screw your spigot to that's solid. So I'm gonna go ahead and drill the hole through that so I can see exactly where it's gonna come out on the other side and make those measurements on the other side for my PEX. So the hole's drilled. To get a 3/4 inch PEX through, you do need a 1 inch drill bit. I didn't need anything quite that long, but the drill bit by itself never would have got through. So you do need, that's probably a good almost 12 inches from the front of this wall all the way through the other wall on the other side. So something to keep in mind when you're getting your drill bit is to make sure you have an extension or get a drill bit that's just long enough, 1 inch. So now you can see my hole on the other side, which will tell me exactly how far up I'm going to need to come to the end, or where the middle of my T needs to be, is right there at that hole. So I'll do a little more measuring, and then be able to cut my PEX with the T attached to it. All right, I did some pretty basic things here. Like I used a level to bring my line over so that so I was the same height above the pipe over here. And then I used the level to mark a line on the back wall directly level with the top of my pipe. You add the 1 inch that it's going to go down into the pipe. So this was 14.5 inches from that line to the line down here. So it's 15.5 with the 1 inch depth that's going to go in there. Now remember, my T is going to take up quite a bit of length. I've got to measure exactly how much, and then we want the center of the T right on that line. That way there's no bend in the PEX. Yes, PEX is flexible, but if you're bending it while you insert it into these fittings, it will not get a tight fitting and you will not be watertight. So you really want it to go in perfectly straight. So if your measurements are on, then you stand a much better chance of your pipe going in perfectly straight, 90 degrees, and not getting a leak. All right, so doing my measurements here, the T just happens to be exactly 2 inches to the center from the end. Again, the pipe's going to go in 1 inch. So I actually get to subtract 1 inch from the calculation I did. It'll be 14.5 inches is the length of the pipe I'll need to hit that mark up at the top. Just perfect. So I've already marked my pipe at 14.5 inches. I'll get it cut and deburred on both ends. All right, pipe is deburred, and you can see I marked it using the depth gauge that I bought. I mark it all the way around just in case it gets twisted. I can see all the marks nice and clear. I'll go ahead and pressure fit that or push that in to both the pressure gauge sharkbite and the T sharkbite. All right, that's all pushed in, and you can see there's different kinds of sharkbite fittings. This one you actually twist a ring. After you put it in, you can kind of see the two arrows line up there with the instructions on that one. One thing about sharkbite fittings is, for the most part, they never get removed. They're permanent. Like if you screw up, you need to go buy another fitting if you really want to make sure you have a watertight fitting here. So now I've got to set up the shutoff valve going towards the spigot. So I'll probably need to cut a couple of short lengths of PEX for that. I'll probably cut them off of the old, the original water main that I cut out. All right, so I cut 4 inches of PEX and marked it, shoved, 1 inch that side, 1 inch that side, so I have 2 inches in between. So I've got my shutoff valve now, and the weight's making it come down a little bit. It's mostly still lined up with the hole. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you certainly want it to be close. So I attached the PEX. I actually used the old one that I cut off of the excess that I had from the original water line. If I had to do it again, I'd probably just buy 2 of those 20-inch lengths from Home Depot. Anyway, I cut it off, attached it to the spigot on the other side, and shoved it through. And so now I'll need to measure carefully and cut that, and then I can shove it right into that PEX fitting with the shutoff valve. All right, so you can see that that's on now. I forgot that this particular ball joint actually has more than a 1 inch slip on it. So keep that in mind. Either you need to measure the whole thing. I'm going to see if it seals the way it is or if it has to be shoved all the way in. And then I deburred, marked, and put the water main to the house back into the top fitting. So now, basically we're done. So I might clean up a little bit of my junk here, and then we'll turn it on, and I'll film that, and we'll see if we record me spraying water somewhere or if it works. Alrighty, here goes. I'll go ahead and turn this on. The only place I think I could possibly have a leak is on the other side of that shutoff valve to the spigot because I didn't shove that PEX all the way in because it's such a long run. But if I have a leak there, again, I've got that shutoff valve. I can quickly turn that off and shove it all the way in and then turn it back on. All right, so let's try the water main here. And I see no leaks. I left my faucets in the downstairs bathroom on, and I can hear them running, so I'm actually gonna go take a break and turn them off. And you can see my water pressure is, I don't know if that's about 40 psi, is what it looks like too. Well, I'm back, and I certainly don't see any leaks at all. Now, what I haven't done is turn that valve on to the new spigot, so the floor's completely dry except where I spilled a little water at the back corner there earlier when I disconnected everything. So I'm gonna go make sure I have the spigot off before I turn that valve on so I don't have a bunch of water spraying in the garage. All right, so the spigot was on, so I'm glad I went out there. I'll go ahead and turn this on. We'll see whether or not that has to be fully seated or if it's okay the way it is. Well, there was a big thud. I'm sure as we pressurize the system, I don't see a single drip at all. So now I'm gonna go out and try the spigot into a bucket of water, and we'll see what we get. All right, I have a little bucket here, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn this on now. Looks like it works. So the only thing I have left to do is put a couple of screws on either side into those holes to hold this nice and firm there. And then it's done. You know, honestly, this was a pretty easy job. I think this took me an hour with filming. I bet you could probably knock it out in a half an hour, 45 minutes.